Hello, and it is a Monday, so that means it is National Ignata Review. And now I know a few of you were getting a little bit worried that Chris was either abducted or fired from the company. I can confirm that neither of them things were true. Chris is back after about a month and a half absence. It's wonderful to be back with him, but I'll let the man speak for himself and welcome himself back on. How are you feeling, Chris, and welcome back?
Yeah, thank you very much. Just been a bit busy, but I'm really happy to be back and looking forward to speaking about the weekend's football. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it and should be
Let's
good.
do it. Let's do it. So 19 games in already, Chris, and we have had the first lot of postponements for the season. The Storm Bert, is that what it was called? Bert? Is it Bert? I think
I
it might
think
be
I think it was Bert.
Storm Bert caused havoc for a couple of our teams and a couple of our fixtures, including the big one, the one that was supposed to set the weekend's tone. Oldham Rochdale, and it's funny because when me and Lauren were doing predictions on Thursday, I said my head says that this game's going to be decided by the snow and it'll be a P, and that's what it was. But we'll get onto the postponements a little bit more towards the end of the show. Because I've got a few things I want to touch upon about the how Saturday went down from a Rochdale perspective, I guess. But like I said, that's towards the end of the show. Considering you are back for the first time in a while, shall we dust the cobwebs off for you? And do you want to get us into a 7-goal thriller, please, mate, involving Solihull Moors and Hartlepool?
Let's do it. Let's do it. Obviously, Hartlepool struggled this season, but a big 4-3 away win has helped them push up the table with Joe Gray scoring twice. With Hartlepool went ahead in the 17th minute, and Adam Campbell scored and putting it under the keeper. And look, I think for Hartlepool, they just got into the game. Solihull got a goal back in the 35th minute from Connor Wilkinson. And then 4 minutes later, Joe Gray scored his first of the afternoon to make it 2-1 going into the break. Then into the second half, Solihull made it level after 51 minutes with Mark Warburton scoring. And then actually went 3-2 up with Stevenson making it 3-2 after the 59 minutes. But then a minute later, Solihull doing Solihull things, conceding, Joe Gray getting his second, and then 5 minutes later, Manny Dissoure scores in the 65th minute, and there were no more goals for 25 minutes, which was a bit weird. You'd think there'd be more goals in that game as the way it
Disappointed, I've
went,
not
but
got my money's worth there.
I know exactly. You want to get your money's worth, but
Um,
a big away win for Hartlepool in a very strange game, I think.
Yeah, I think for me, I think Hartlepool have been very, very. I don't know what the word is, inconsistent, but I worry that we use that word probably a lot for a lot of these teams in this division. But in patches, I think Hartlepool have looked a very, very solid outfit this year. Like even so, the I watched the game on DAZN against York when they went to York a couple of weeks ago, and obviously I know they got beat 5-3. But even in periods of that game, they were having comfortable, sustained pressure on the York goalmouth, and they missed a couple of chances, and that game could have been different. So it's quite obvious that they've got the talent there. They just need to be able to do it consistently. But yeah, I think they're starting to like pull themselves away now. Whether they can get up and around them sort of playoff places as the turn of the year comes in is yet to be seen. They are only 4 points behind Halifax, but I do think the sort of I don't know. I think this might be a bit crazy to say early doors, but I'm gonna say it and I'm gonna stick my neck on the line. And I don't know what you feel like, but I feel like the top five in this division are quite a bit away in terms, quite a bit in front of in terms of the rest of the team in terms of quality so far this year. So I think the 6 and 7 spot in the playoffs are open, but I think a fifth to first is just a case of rearranging the order. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with you, to be fair. I feel like York, Forest Green, Gateshead, Barnet, and Oldham are probably going to be those teams that are going to be up in the top. I think you got probably three, maybe four for the title. I would put Oldham in there. I just feel like the amount of times they've lost is really like they've only lost 2 games all season, so I feel like you kind of have to put them up there. Obviously, York, I think, are unbelievable. Forest Green are really good, and we're a decent side as well. So look, there's only 1 point separating the top three, so I think it makes it really interesting, and I think it's going to be really unpredictable. I see it going down to the final day, to be fair, which makes
I
it really
think
good
just
for us.
yeah, I think you're right, and I think it's nice to have. I mean, it's not nice being involved, I guess, and having like such an open title race. But for a neutral, it's nice to have a bit of competitive edge for a change, you know. But just to finish up on this 7 goal thriller, from a Solihull Moors point of view, I think they've done really well over the last couple of weeks. You know, to pull themselves back, they proper turned around the form. I know Callum was starting to buzz a little bit, so I think it is just a little bit of a minor setback. Obviously, they they want to look to see if they can get the contract extended of Adu Poku, because he looks electric. If I'm being honest, from what I've seen on the highlights and stuff, and I think Callum's got a shrine to him. If I'm being honest, he's all he ever talks about in the chats. But quite rightly so, you know. So I think it is just a setback from Solihull Moors. But have you kind of been sort of impressed considering how poor they were at the start of the season, and how they've managed to sort of steady the ship, and now they only find themselves 1 point outside the playoffs?
Yeah, I think they've done really well, to be fair. I think when we went up there, I think it was about October-ish time. They played really well. Like they're a really good side, and look, they started off quite poorly. I think maybe of that hangover of the FA Trophy and the playoff final defeat, but I think they've turned it around really well. And look, they only sit a point outside the playoffs after 19 games, which is I think where you want to be really for a club like Solihull, just trying to go for another playoff campaign, and I think they're going to do that. And I think they'll probably be around, as we've said, the sixth, seventh mark. I think that's so open, but I do think they'll be one of those teams that will gain one of those two spots.
Yeah, I have to agree. For sure, yeah, I agree. So, um, next up, then, I think we need to go to the league leaders, Chris. To be honest, because this game on paper from the preview, I think just because of how sort of decent and solid Yeovil have looked, considering, you know, it's the first. I know, again, I'll bang the drum. Maybe historically Yeovil are a big side, but people I seem to be forgetting that they got promoted last year from the south, and it is the first year back in the National League for a couple of years. So people might have thought they were going to struggle, but I think they've been consistently solid for a big portion of this season. And but I think that was reflected on Thursday when both me and Lauren decided to put a draw for the game versus York, but that didn't transpire. In actual fact, I think York just proved the superior quality. Really, it was a hammering, really, wasn't it, Chris? It ended 4-0 to the home side York City, and yeah, look, it was the Ollie Pace show, if I'm being honest. You know, obviously Yeovil really didn't help the cause, getting Cousins Dawson sent off within 10 minutes, straight red card, and yeah, from that moment onwards against the league leaders away from home, you kind of praying. You know what I mean? There's not much more you can do then. Like you kind of damage limitation, and when you've got the firepower that York have in Ollie Pace and Tyree Sinclair and Lionel John Lewis, you know, it's always going to be. And what's the other striker called? I can't remember his name. Is it Adi? Uh, what's the other striker called?
The one on loan,
Um, no, the York striker that starts on the bench, but they all love him, and he scored. He scored. Did he score twice against Hartlepool the other weekend? It slipped my name completely, but York fans, please do refresh my memory. But
Akinyemi.
that's it, something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
but they have the firepower, and if you give them the chances and give them an extra man, it's going to be hard for them. So yeah, Ollie Pearce got a hat trick, and then that Tyrese Sinclair got one just before halftime as well. The game was done really at halftime, 2-0 to York with a man advantage. Then obviously they scored the 2 extra goals in the second half, and then Yeovil decided, you know what, we're not going to stand for this. We're going to get two red cards in the same game, and then the 90th minute they got reduced to 9 men when Bernard got sent off. So a really bad day at the office for the Glovers, but I do think they've had a solid enough start to the season, and again they are only a point outside the playoffs themselves. So I think it's just one of them days where you kind of hold your hands up, admit that you've been beat with a team with a bit better quality, and go again and reset. Obviously, we will touch a little bit on the Tuesday games. Obviously, I know we didn't touch on Solihull and Hartlepool's opponents, but we'll do that in a little bit. But Yeovil's task doesn't really get much easier on Tuesday, if we're being honest, because they played your boys, Chris, Barnet.
Mm-hmm.
And look, they could pull something off because Barnet have, I was going to say, shown signs of weaknesses, but I don't know whether that's fair. But like, I do think it was just basically what I'm trying to say. A very long-winded way of saying it is, I think it was just a blip for Yeovil. I think York are very, very good. They're proving that they're in it for the long run. They're in it for the title race, and they've got the quality, they've got the money, and yeah, just a bad day really for Yeovil.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Yeovil have been actually really impressed me. I said probably at the start of the season they kind of drop off away from those playoff places, but after 19 games, they've really stayed there and been quite consistent, I think, in the season. And I think they look quite good. And I think for us, it's going to be a tough game on Wednesday going down there. It's going to be cold, it's going to be a proper sticky affair. And I think they're a really good side. And it'll be interesting to see how we do, especially with our away form, which kind of needs a bit of work. But yeah, I was really impressed with York, 4-0. I think they're really strong. I think defensively they're really good. Offensively they're unbelievable. They've only conceded 14 goals all season and are the second top goal scorers in the league. So I think it shows that they are so capable of going the distance. And to be fair, I think they will. I think they'll win the league. I think they've got so much
Yeah.
strength in depth, and I think they've got, defensively they're unbelievable. And I just see them pipping us. I think.
I think that I could see it. I can definitely see your argument, but there's just something in the back of my mind that can't look past Forest Green. I just think Forest Green seems to be getting stronger and stronger, and like they
Mm.
obviously they got a big result at the new one last weekend against York. And yeah, I think Forest Green would be my favourites at this point, but it's wide open. Like you say, any one of maybe 5-6 teams could win this league, and that's crazy, really, to say that just before Christmas. But looking very quickly to who York have on Tuesday night, they go away to Altrincham. So again, a game you would expect them to deal with rather comfortably, but to be fair to Alty, they are looking a more decent outfit than they were maybe 2 months ago, a month and a half ago. So it could prove a test. And then just to mention as well, Solihull and Hartlepool's games are as follows. So Solihull are looking to bounce back with an away trip to Sutton United, and Hartlepool play on the. Did Hartlepool play?
They might play on
Yeah,
Wednesday
they
because
do.
half the games are
Yeah, they do.
split.
They play Hartlepool play on the Tuesday at night at home to AFC Fylde. So you would I mean, it depends what sort of Fylde team turn up there, but I would expect Hartlepool to hopefully carry on the momentum a little bit and get the 3 points there. So yeah, they're the two games involving the two teams in our first game discussion. But moving on, Chris, shall we touch upon your boys?
Yes, we shall. We beat Woking 2-0, and to be honest, the weather did not make this a pretty game. I think it was up there with one of the worst games of football I've ever watched, because the ball would not actually go past the halfway line for the goal kicks, which look, it made it an interesting affair, especially in the first half, because we had the wind against us, so we didn't really get going, I think. But after 19 minutes, Reece Brown made it 1-0. Lovely little finish, actually, to be fair. Just knocks it down really nicely, puts it in the bottom left-hand corner, and that made it 1-0. And that's, to be fair, in the first half, not much really happened. And then in the second half, we were a lot stronger. And then 7 minutes in, Bailey Hobson had a shot. Keeper just spilt it right back to Bailey Hobson, and he did score, making it 2-0. And I think he's been an absolute revelation for us this season. Obviously, coming on loan from Chesterfield and only on a 1 month, and then it's been extended to January. So I think he's going to be key. If we can keep him till the end of the season, I think we could that would really help us and boost us, and puts us a point behind York and Forest Green, which is great. And look, I think we started the season really well. A couple blips along the way, but I think we've looked really good. And we are in a title fight, which is a great thing to say. And I think that is the expectation this season, is to either win the title or go up. So yeah, I was quite pleased with how we played and got the result on a tricky day on the weather front. So
Yeah, definitely. And I think
can't complain with
I
that.
think they're the sort of potential banana skins for potential title challenges as well, aren't they? Like, because Woking are a bit of a weird one. They really, really kind of fell off a cliff up until last weekend. They got a big win last weekend, the first win since the 10th of September. But they had been a lot higher in this division, obviously, very, very early on in this league season. I think they were about fourth in the league at one point, and they were making us question a few things. But then, obviously, they kind of slid off a cliff. So they're the sort of ones that you need to professionally navigate and just kind of get the wins at any cost. And look, I think Barnet dealt very well with the sort of harsh conditions and just proved that they are, going to be up and around there. Slouches really. I know you've lost 5 games this season, but a couple of them results you could have been on the right end of it. Another day, if certain things would have fell for you. So it's not like you've been battered in games, I wouldn't say. Even when you were, was it Solihull where you were like, was it 4? What was
4-2.
it?
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah,
It wasn't.
yeah, and but even then
Yeah.
you nearly staged a mad comeback.
Nah,
Were you
4-3,
like,
4-3, 4-3.
yeah, you were 4-1 down, weren't you? I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
But even then, that's what I'm saying. You still staged a mad comeback, so it shows that you've still got that mentality to stick in and around it, which is I think is important. But from a Woking point of view, I think it's just kind of more of the same. I think they probably looked last weekend, with a big win, and thought, "Oh my God, this could be a season turner." But they just, I don't know. I don't know whether I'm worried for Woking. I don't know whether they're stronger than the current other 5, 6 below them. What are your sort of thoughts on Woking, Chris? And what sort of battles you see them coming up against as the season progresses?
I think Woking are in very serious trouble. I
Yeah,
I think they are. I think they're going to go down. Look, obviously, I only saw the game yesterday, Saturday, but there was nothing. There's literally nothing. I don't. I can't. I don't know if you saw that the manager's interview, but he was having a right moan, and that just screams red flags. Like, he seems like
desperate.
he's under so much pressure and desperation just to get results, and then just starting moaning his match, like, post match. It was just a bit strange, but I think Woking could. I think they're going to be in a relegation battle again. I don't think they have that much quality. I think, I don't think they've got much up front. Defensively, I don't think they're fantastic. In the middle, Gorman did decent, but he's not got anyone around him to help him. And
I seen
look, I
I
think it's going to be
seen
a long
friends
season.
friends of ours, the Bees Pod. They put out a tweet saying, something's not right with Dale Gorman at Woking when he gets a better reception off the Barnet fans than he did off his own fans,
Yeah,
and that really sort of was interesting to me. But yeah, I don't. Woking are a weird one because I don't know if it's disrespectful to say that maybe in previous seasons they have been punching above the weight. or like maybe this is the where they're supposed to be. I don't really know. I don't really know what I'm sort of expecting from a Woking side. I mean, I think me and Lauren said it on the on the preview. Obviously, we'll touch upon Boston in a second. But if you look at that maybe bottom six right now, I think I'm going to stick my neck on the line here again, and I'm going to say I think Ebbsfleet are gone. I think that game on Saturday was huge for them. I think if they were going to stay up, they needed to get the win, against a team like Boston, and obviously it didn't. Against they needed to get the win, and it just didn't transpire for them really. And look, I think Boston have given themselves a fighting chance now because it's a great appointment, Coughlin. I think he'll get them really structured and get them up for a good fight, but they are still, what is it? They are still 5 points behind the pace. So I think Ebbsfleet are gone unless they pull an absolute Christmas miracle and half out. I think Boston have given themselves a chance, but then I think you're looking anywhere from 22nd to 18 for maybe 2 or 3 spaces. And Woking are definitely in that conversation. So yeah, I can see why you're worried for sure. But yeah. So next up then, let's talk about a team that have been a little bit patchy up until this weekend, a little bit inconsistent in the last couple of weekends. They'd had a loss and a draw coming into this game week, but they banished the Demons, Chris, and they got a very, very comfortable, professional 5-0 away win, and that side is Gateshead. And they were away to Maidenhead United. Now, again, the task maybe got a little bit easier for Gateshead when Loco got a red card on the 17th minute. Obviously, very, very early red card. And from that moment onwards, a team with the play style of Gateshead and how they can control and kind of pass you and make you feel dizzy. There was only really going to be one outcome in my mind, and the floodgates opened. You had a Butterfield brace. His first one was on the 19th minute, and then we had a own goal from Massey from Maidenhead United just on the stroke of half time to take the heat in 2-0 at half time. And then the second half, it was usual suspect. So it was Regan Booty, who is proving to be an absolute masterstroke at this division, if we're being honest. I mean, we know he's got the talent. We seen it at his previous club, but he's a joke, really. He can assist, he can score, he's got everything you want from that sort of midfield standpoint. And then it was Callum Whelan, again, who I've had first-hand experience seeing obviously at League Two level with Oldham, and he was very, very young and raw back then, but there was definitely potential and talent, and I think the move away to Gateshead has unlocked that for him now, and I think he's really sort of flourishing in that system, and he's probably one of the better technical footballers really in this division, and fair play to him for kind of kicking his career on. And then Butterfield got his second of the game on the 65th minute to end the scoring. So yeah, 5-0 for Gateshead. Really sort of impressive after a little tiny minor stutter over the last couple of weeks. They themselves are only 4 points off the top as well, which is a little bit crazy. And yeah, but from a Maidenhead point of view, they are kind of honest, like probably we're talking of Ebbsfleet form and Boston's form, and nobody's really. We've kind of been giving Maidenhead a free pass up until this point, but just to highlight, they have no win in 6 and 4 defeats on the spin. with a minus 15 goal difference, and they've only won 4 games all season. So they're only 3 points. There's a 3-point gap between them and Braintree, so they can still. It is still salvageable, I guess, but it's seriously, seriously poor form, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a bit of a worry, I think. I think Maidenhead, they're kind of not gone under the radar a little bit, but their form's not been that great, and it's just kind of gone in a bad way, I think, in the last couple of weeks, which is just a bit, I think, odd. I think that Maidenhead is still a good side, and look, they stay up. I think they've got a great record of staying up every season in this division, and I do expect that to continue. And look, it's not like an Ipswich where they're 11 points behind after 19 games. They're only 3 points off, so they win the next game, they're right back in the mix to stay in the division. And you've also got to think that Gateshead are a really good side, and they've had some really tough games. They've had Gateshead, they've had Sutton in their last 3, Forest Green. So from those last, I think, 3 games, you probably think, it's going to be difficult, and they probably have struggled in those, conceding 10 goals in those 3 games. So yeah, it is tough for Maidenhead, but for Gateshead, I think they've bounced back really well from the manager leaving a couple of months ago, and look, they're doing really well, and it looks like they're still playing the same style of football, which is I think is really a real great credit to the what they're building over there at Gateshead. They're still having the same football, even though when other managers leave, and I think that's a great attribute for the football club to have, and I think it's going to be really successful.
Yes, I agree. I agree. So the final game we're going to touch upon before the ad break, a brand new ad break, which is new for Chris as well. So very exciting. But do you want to touch us upon the Forest Green game against Southend, please?
Yes, yes, yes. It was a 2-2 draw down on the south coast, with Forest Green taking the league after 40 minutes with
Did you
uh
just say taking the league?
nah.
I think you
I've
might have
said
just
I've
said
said
taking the that he
I've
just
s-
you heard it on the podcast first. He's
I've
conceded defeat.
I said my prediction about 10 minutes ago. I'm not backing down that early. That would be bad. But Forest Green did take the lead after 40 minutes, with Bunker getting his goal just before half time to make it 1-0 to Forest Green going into half time. And then on the 63rd minute, the hosts level with Nathan Ralph converting from close range after a long throw. And then Forest Green bounced back 10 minutes later with Christian Deutsch making it 2-1 with 17 minutes to play. And then 4 minutes after that, Southend got a goal, making it 2-2 in the 77th minute. And that is how it stayed, and means Forest Green slipped up while the other 2 teams in the so-called close title race got their wins. So makes it very, very close. And I think it's a tough place to go, Southend, I think, always. And they've kind of come back a little bit in recent week. Obviously, they're 16th in the league. They're 7 points drift to the playoffs in the early days, but I think they're kind of just in a rebuilding phase after
Yeah,
the ownership issues over the last few years. So
I
I don't
mean the
think it's
only
too
thing you would
concerning.
say to play sort of devil's advocate for Southend a little bit, no winning 3, and they are only 4 points off the bottom 4. So
Mm.
maybe they should look over the shoulders a little bit more in terms of. I think you should kind of focus on pulling yourself away from that battle before you kind of look upwards. You know what I mean? Like pick your battle first. Just make sure you get out of the sort of mire a little bit, and then you can maybe look upwards. But look, it's a good point against a very very good side. We can all we've been banging the sort of Forest Green drum for a while, and I think obviously it's a little bit of a slip up in terms of that title picture, but like you say, uh, it is now. So it is. What is it now? It is 1 point separating the top 3, which is crazy. And I think Forest Green would have took this position at the start of the season, if I'm being honest. But right, so this is the exciting bit. We're gonna cut to an ad break, an actual real ad break. that like we've got, because I don't know whether you've been alert, Chris, on your first podcast back, but you can see in the middle of the screens there's a little Audible logo, and that's because we have a partnership here at the deck with Audible, which can give you, our beautiful listeners and viewers, so a real good deal on their website and across the audiobook sections on their app. So to tell us more is our friend of the podcast and wonderful League One Lowdown host, Jamie Johnson. So we will be back with you after this short break.
This podcast is in association with Audible, and they bring you a fantastic offer. 99p for 3 months of their subscription. And for that, you also get a £10 voucher to spend on whatever book you want to listen to. It could be Richard Osman's Murder Mysteries. It could be Harry Potter. It could be the heaps of football autobiographies they have on Audible as well. And for 3 months, for 99p, you get 3 months of their service. Terms and conditions do apply, and you can find those below in the description.
I tell you what, Chris, I love a good book, man. I also love a good deal. You can't knock that, can you? And you can tell we're going up in the world here at Natter, actually, right? An actual ad break. It's unbelievable.
It was cool. I've heard big things about the ad break, and I was looking forward to it, and I was not disappointed.
Yes, but to contain our excitement, shall we get back to the second half of the fixtures?
Let's
do
it.
it. Let's do it. So next up, we have a battle at the bottom of the league, and it was Boston Braintree. Now, this game was a very interesting one for Boston, especially because they were hitting sort of desperation times. You know, they just sacked the manager. They were well cut adrift in the league. The second bottom, only not bottom because they Ebbsfleet are arguably going for the title of the worst National League team to ever exist in a league season. So, yeah, desperate times for Boston called for desperate measures, and they made the appointment. They made the very good appointment, in my opinion, of Graham Coughlin earlier last week. And we talk about the manager bounce all the time on these podcasts, and when are people going to realise that the manager bounce is a real thing, no matter who you're coaching, at what level? It does happen, and it happened in a big way for Boston this weekend with a vital 3 points for Boston against fellow strugglers or fellow relegation battlers, shall we say, in Braintree Town at home. So, yeah, I mean, perfect sort of day for Boston, really, because they were 3-0 up. I mean, they got off to a flyer. The Coughlin era got off to a flyer, and it was green after 1 minute to put the Pilgrims ahead. And yeah, they just never really looked back, if I'm being honest. It was then doubled by Hazel in the 43rd minute, and then the route was completed in the 57th minute through Maguire. But one of your boys, Chris, did pull a consolation back for Braintree, and probably their brightest spark this season, or one of the brightest sparks, in Jermaine Francis. Now, I've been banging up the drum for this boy with you for a good number of weeks. I think this kid's obviously got a lot of talent. I mean, the younger viewers of ours might recognize his name off hashtag United fame. And you know, he then got his break. Did he go? What did he go to? Where did he went to National League?
Chelmsford.
Yeah,
Chelmsford
National League
City.
South, Chelmsford City, from hashtag, and then Barnet picked him up from there. And then obviously he's had a loan for his development. And he seems to be making strides and coming on strength for strength. But before I ask your opinions on Francis, which you can tell me about in a second, just how much of an important victory is this, not just for Coquelin to get off the mark, but also I know it doesn't really change much for them at the minute because they're still second bottom and still adrift by 5 points, but they've stopped the rot now, and hopefully that is a little bit of a confidence a shot in the veins, right, for Boston.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. We've said before the manager bounce does exist, and I think it's quite evident to see that it does. And yeah, for Boston, I think it's more a confidence boost as well. You know, you're going into that game against Braintree, like you probably need to win it, and if you don't, you're gonna kind of just make it a bit harder for yourselves. And look, they did really well. Scoring in the first minute, I think, shows that intention, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to build. And look, they did really well. And a 3-1 victory at home, I think now builds confidence for the management, for the team, and for the fans going forward. And look, it's their first win in 12, and I think it's a big win. And look, they're five points off. I feel that they've got a really good. They've got now one of the better managers down the bottom of the table, and I think that's going to really help them and push them forward up the table and potentially to survival.
From a Braintree point of view, I think we've talked about how well they've kind of done to edge the nose out early doors and get them 5 wins on the table quite early, but sort of I think it is important to be realistic. They are, even though they won the previous 2 before this game. This is quite a not a concerning result, but it is a poor result, I think, and they are edging ever sort of closer to that dreaded dotted line, really, aren't they? I mean, are you? I wouldn't say worried at this point, but in terms of Braintree fans, do they need to sort of temper expectations a little? Not temper expectations, but be careful not to get sucked into that horrible relegation battle, and before they know it, they could be back in that bottom 4 spaces.
I think the fan you probably are in a relegation battle. I think that would be a bit unfair to say that they're not at this stage of the season. But look, I think they've got a good squad. I don't think they'll go down because I think the quality that they have in all positions, I think, is really strong. I think across the whole team that they've got so much quality and they've got a really good manager who is there and has had really good recruitment. Look, we talked about Jermaine Francis. I think that's a great coup for Braintree for the season, and I think he'll do really well there. But it's if they can just stay consistent. I think that's the issue. They've had before their run of 2 wins, they had 3 losses in a row, which you can't really have if you want to stay in this division. So I think it'll be difficult for them, but I think they'll stay up. To be fair.
Yeah, I agree. But I think, like I say, we talk a lot about the title race at the top. The relegation battle at the bottom is equally as exciting, depending on your persuasion in this league, I guess. But so next up, we have 2 teams with very inconsistent form so far this season, I think it's fair to say, and that was Aldershot versus Altrincham. So, Chris, do you want to take us away on this one?
Yes, I will. Just load it up. So Aldershot Town got a 2-1 victory over Altrincham, with James Henry having a first half double in 4 minutes to make sure that the Shots took the points at the EBB Stadium, with after 26 minutes putting in the first goal to make it 1-0, and then 4 minutes later scored again to make it 2-0. And the drama did not end in this game, with there being a red, 2 yellows for Tom Crawford, who sent his marching orders with 12 minutes to go after a challenge on Tyler Frost, and then Altrincham got a goal back in the 90th minute to give there a bit of excitement, but unfortunately it wasn't enough for Altrincham, and Aldershot go up to 17th in the league while Altrincham stay in 10th position. And I feel like for Aldershot they've had I think they're struggling a lot this season. After last season just missing out on the playoffs, I think we thought maybe that they'd kind of push on and get a bit closer, but I think they've just gone the opposite way. They've done a bit of a Woking, really. Done what their
feel like
rivals have.
people must be bored of us saying it, but I think it is fair to just mention it again. I think these 2 teams in the early parts of the season have probably suffered in the sort of transfers in terms of losing, so 3 of the more talented players in this division last year came from these 2 teams, obviously. Grison Clark for Alty, and then Tolaj and Stokes for Aldershot. That we've spoke about it loads of times, but that quality is hard to replace, and they just neither team have managed to do it. But Alty look a bit more comfortable and look a little bit more like the time that sort of turn around the season. The goals are coming from more sort of varied sources now. I mean, I seen the other week, I think, was it last weekend, even bloody Joe Nuttall scored for Altrincham, and when that happens, that must be a special day. But yeah, I think Alty are getting a little bit more consistent. Whether they're consistent enough to push for a playoff place, I would have to say no. I don't think they're stronger than the top 7 currently, and I don't think they will get stronger than the top 7, if I'm being honest. So yeah, I mean, I know they're only 2 points off it, but I do think maybe apart from Halifax, I do think everyone in and around it are too much, and I've got too much quality for this Alty side this year. But saying that, I do say Halifax because they are the one in 7th place. I do think both Yeovil and Solihull Moors have more quality than Altrincham anyway. So I think it'd be one of them 2 tied swapping out with Halifax anyway in the long run. Would you agree with that, Chris?
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think we've said it so many times that the loss of Chris Clark is going to be a really big loss for Altrincham, and I don't think they've really replaced him, to be honest. And I would agree with what you said about the kind of the teams in the playoffs. I don't expect Altrincham to be in that playoff hunt. I just don't think that they've got as much quality as they did last season. I think if Chris Clark wanted to stay at the club, Altrincham probably had to get promoted, and he's gone to Peterborough, had an unfortunate injury, which is disappointing for him. But I think for Altrincham, they're in a bit of a weird kind of space. I think at the moment, they're not good enough for playoffs, but they're nowhere near like a relegation side. So they're just sitting in that mid-table position,
But
trying
it
to.
almost kind of just feels like they're playing it like, not that there's nothing riding on their season, because obviously they can get better, but like in that sort of sentiment, like they're kind of just playing for the points. Do you know what I mean? Like
100%.
it's not. It doesn't feel like it's going to affect either side of the table. Q2 Q2 the end of May, when there's always that one team that climbs out of nowhere and wins the playoffs, and that'll probably be Alty now after we've said this, right, Chris? But yeah, so like you say, from an Aldershot point of view, really disappointing season. Obviously, I don't think they're in danger. I think they are stronger than the rest of the teams below them. But again, they are only 4 points off the bottom 4. So it's so tight in that sort of mid-section, bottom half, mid-table relegation scrap, isn't it?
Yeah, first because everyone's a bit inconsistent. You're going to have teams 1 week win, 1 week lose, and then it just kind of just balances out that kind of way. And it's so close between. To be fair, if you're mid-table, technically, on paper, you still could get playoffs.
Yeah.
It's so early. Like we're not even halfway through, so you never know. Look at Grimsby a couple of seasons ago. I think they were like 17th in like February, and it's got playoffs and got promoted. So we've seen strange things happen. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next 4 months.
You're right. You're right, indeed. So the last game that we're going to touch upon that actually has a lot of action in it before I give Chris his always regular pleasure of talking us through quite a dull draw to end the podcast is a big win for Tamworth against, again, a very inconsistent and quite underwhelming this season, Dagenham and Redbridge, in my opinion. No winning in 5 now for the Daggers, and they are beginning to slide off a little bit as well. There's a lot. There's, like you say, there's so many teams with that sort of 22 to like 25 points in this division at this point. It's crazy. And yeah, daggers are just beginning to, I don't know what to say. Fall off might be a bit dramatic because I don't know whether they were ever on to start with. But their sort of inconsistency is poor. But for Tamworth, I think it was a big response from last weekend. Obviously, my boys give them a little bit of a beating. If we're being honest, it was 4-0. It could have probably been 5 or 6 if we just want to be honest. But I think that's just because of the quality gap between the two teams, and it's probably expected. But Tamworth have had a really good season. They sit themselves in 14th. They have 7 wins already this year, Chris. They are on 25 points. They are already 7 points clear of them dreaded 4 relegation spaces. And just because we like to give some optimism and be a little bit cheeky and a little bit optimistic, Tamworth currently sits 4 points off their National League playoff spaces. So, like Chris said, you never know. You never know. If I'm a Tamworth fan, I'm maybe starting to dream here, Chris.
Wow. Well, you never know. And I think out of all the teams that have gone up, bar Yeovil, I think Tamworth have been the most impressive. I remember we played them, we beat them 7-0, and I thought at that time they're in trouble. They're in trouble. Like you can't lose 7-0 and kind of bounce back, but they've done really well, and I think they've really impressed. Obviously, they had that big win in the FA Cup against Huddersfield, which I think got the eyes of most of the football world on them, which can go either way. It can be a positive, but sometimes can be a negative. But they've pushed on, and I think the win against the Dagenham and Redbridge side, who I think are quite a good side this season. I think we played them last week. They were 3-1 up and did lose. I think that is a bit of an issue for Dagenham, but look, Tamworth have been really impressive. I think they've had a really good start to the season. I think the only concern is can they stay there? It's if they can stay
Yeah.
consistent with that run of form. But I think so far so good, and look, they're 4 points outside the playoffs.
I think the crazy thing with Tamworth, like you just alluded to, then when they do get beat, they seem to get beat quite heavily, which is a little bit of a worry. 7-0 for your boys, 4-0 for my boys. Like it's not like when they get beat that they have like some tight defeats, but obviously when they win and when they can pull it out of the bag, they look good. So I think the season their sort of season is on a knife edge either way at the minute, and it could go either way. They could surprise the whole world and push on for the playoffs, or they could get dragged right back in as the season progresses, because like this is the perfect segue. But as the season progresses, we're going to start seeing, the squads get more tired. The smaller squads maybe struggle, because you would imagine there's going to be a little bit of fixture congestion with, the FA Trophy starting, people still in the FA Cup. The weather, Chris, there'll be postponements for the weather as well as we go into the winter months. And it started this weekend. We had 3 games off this weekend because of Storm Bert. We alluded to it a little bit at the start of the podcast, but one of them was the Oldham Rochdale game. And look, in hindsight, the referee made the right decision, because it was absolutely teeming down for about 9 hours straight. And I'm not just talking about small rain either. To be fair, it looked like monsoon season in my garden at points on Saturday night. And I was kind of thankful that we weren't in the Crown Oil Arena, because the disabled section isn't very undercover for disabled fans. And even though I'm a hard northerner, I think 2 hours worth of torrential rain would have probably put me in hospital, if I'm being honest. So I'm quite thankful for that, really. But it wasn't the postponement that angered a lot of Oldham fans. It was a lot of the other stuff that came around it. So it was the fact. So to start with, the referee made the right call, granted, but he did a pitch inspection at 10 o'clock, Chris. At 10 o'clock, bear in mind it was a 12:30. He did a pitch inspection at 10 o'clock, which, okay, fine. It's absolutely fine. And then the conclusion of that pitch inspection was just a short statement saying the referee is doing another pitch inspection at 10 to give this game as much chance as it can do to go ahead. Now, I'm not any form of like weather person or scientist, but what did he think in his head was going to change in that half an hour slot? It would have made more sense for him to do pitch inspection at 10 o'clock and maybe say do another one at 11:30. That would have made more sense to try and see, you know, what would have happened with the weather in the last, like, in that sort of an hour and a half slot. So there was that really confused me to start with. And then there was Oldham fans in the pubs. This is the problem as well with the fighting and stuff last year. There was already people drinking from like 8-9 o'clock in the morning. So you already had that problem anyway. And then it was just a farce waiting to hear whether the game was on or off. And actually, if we're being honest, the Oldham fans that were already in the pub, myself included, we only found out because the coppers came in and told us the game were off. And I think that's really poor because Oldham even got a statement out saying the game was off before Rochdale did. Like, surely it's Rochdale's prerogative to tell us at their home stadium that their game is off, you know? Like, and also there was rumours going around of them, well, not rumours because he said it in the statement yesterday, they took their sort of frost covers, rain covers, whatever you want to call them, off at 4 p.m. on the Friday afternoon when they knew it was going to hit 0 on the Saturday night or early Saturday morning. Just some logic doesn't add up. And I know Rochdale fans will probably come at me and say frost covers and rain covers aren't the same thing. And I understand that, but also you could argue that both of them are to do with wet weather, you know? So surely they would have done a bit of a job if they would have kept the covers on a little bit longer. No, I don't know what your sort of thoughts and opinions are on this, Chris, but I do feel like I'm not for 1 minute trying to put out some conspiracy in the world that Rochdale didn't want to play the game like some Oldham fans. I do think that is a bit of a stretch, but I do think maybe more could have done to try and preserve the game up until the point, because I found it very, very interesting to know that the wording of the postponement was a waterlogged pitch and not a frozen pitch when it was only really raining for like 5.5 hours up until that point.
I think you're just a Rochdale hater. I think that's what we've gathered.
Listen, anyone that's listened to these podcasts episodically this season would quite rightly probably tell you that the opposite, if I'm being honest. I've had to come here and give Rochdale the credit that they have deserved week in, week out. Do you know how hard that has been? So excuse me for calling them out on their shit ground and shit pit for 1 week.
No, I think obviously everything you said, I think, you know, it is poor, I think, but we're going to get to this time of the year where it's going to happen, you know. The postponements happen. It's the National League. The pitches are a bit poo anyway. And I think, you know, this won't be the last time we're going to be like, why have they done this? Look at Fylde and Eastleigh. I think it got called off at 2 p.m. Well, that's a good 6-hour trip. You know, that is just long. And, you know, I feel that it's not going to be the last time we're going to talk about postponements on this podcast. And it's going to be so many times. And there's going to be instances where there's probably going to be worse situations than the one at Rochdale and probably the one at Fylde. So,
I mean,
yeah,
I think
it's this time
the
of
only
year.
the only thing I would say, and this is a fair argument, maybe the referee made the decision that late because he knew it was literally like 6-7 miles between the two clubs, and it would only have took me. Well, luckily, unfortunately for me, I live in Rochdale, so it only takes me like 5 minutes to get to the ground anyway. But you know, because it's quite that short distance between the two clubs, I wonder whether that came in the sort of thinking process anyway. But look, it just means that we'll just have to get our annual free away points from Scotland on a Tuesday night in January anyway, doesn't it? So nothing really changes from that sort of point of view, I guess. But before we finish, Chris is back, so that means the podium is returning. So are you ready? Are you ready to do the podium?
You got a bit excited about the postponement, so I'm gonna have to step in. We have forgotten about Ebbsfleet and Wealdstone, which I don't mind missing out Wealdstone, but I think it would be rude too. So.
It's just because it was such a dull affair, really, if I'm being honest. But go on, Chris. I'll let you do what you love to do, and you can talk to us about a draw to end the podcast.
Lovely. So Eastleigh against Wealdstone, a classic 1-1 draw in the National League, with Noah Booten, I think his name is, scored after 7 minutes with a through ball and a cool finish to beat Jacob Adams, the new Wealdstone goalkeeper. And yeah, not much else happened, and that made it 1-0 half time, and then 20 minutes into the second half, Joe. What? No, that's not him. They've not got the score on. Sam Ashford scored for Wealdstone, making it 1-1. in the second half and making it a point for both sides. And I'll be honest, not much to talk about. Eastleigh move up to 12th, and then Wealdstone move a point outside of the drop zone, which they've had a good comeback. To be fair, I'm not a huge fan of Wealdstone, but they've done really well actually. They've fought back in recent weeks. They're unbeaten in their last, I think, 6 games, which great turnaround from them, including the FA Cup win away at Grimsby. So yeah, they've done really well, and fair play to them.
Yeah,
Done
I
well.
think you did a perfect job. I wouldn't want anyone else to talk about draws to end the podcast, Chris. That is your domain. That is your shit. You are the king.
No, that's what I do.
So moving on. Shall we get to the podium?
Let's do it, mate. Let's do it.
And I think we should do it reverse, because unless you've got a sort of rogue shout, I think the gold is locked in, isn't it? Surely, I think the gold belongs to hat trick hero Ollie Pearce.
I think it'd be rude. I think it'd be rude not to give it to him.
Yeah, so I think we should go gold backwards. So if you want to take the silver, and I'll start scouting out for a bronze as you're doing that.
Oh, I've got a bit of pressure now. I've got to find someone. Okay. You've put me on the spot here.
I just like
I
to
think,
keep you on your toes on your first podcast.
yeah,
That's all right.
you've kept me on. I wasn't prepared. I wasn't ready. You know what? I've got a shout.
Go on
I'm going to
then.
go for Jacob Butterfield from Gateshead, scoring 2 goals
Brace.
in a 5-0 thrashing of Maidenhead. So I think he gets second spot. And I think he's been good this season, a bit underrated player. So yeah, I'll go for him.
Okay, so you've made my decision quite easy here, if I'm being honest. I think the thing is, if I give it to one, I've got to give it to two. Can we do what we always do and scumbag two people on the third for a bronze or what?
Yeah, I think we always do it.
Okay, so let's do it. So sharing the bronze, I think, would be just because of the differences in league positions. I'm gonna put Joe Gray and Creaney on bronze, shared with a brace each in the respective games. Now, people might argue, why has Butterfield gone on silver on his own because he's got a brace? But I'm thinking just because Gateshead are a little bit more their sort of playoff pushing, I think it makes a little bit more sense here.
Yeah, I think that's a great shout. I think I like it.
Then, just to very, very briefly finish off the podcast, because we don't do a midweek pod, unfortunately, I'll just finish off by running down the list of games we have to look forward to on Tuesday and Wednesday this week in the National League, and then we will be done. So on Tuesday, you've got Altrincham versus York City. You've got Braintree versus Maidenhead United. You've got Dagenham and Redbridge versus Aldershot Town. You've got Gateshead versus Rochdale. You've got Hartlepool versus Fylde. You've got Oldham at home to Boston. You've got Sutton at home to Solihull Moors. Woking at home to Southend. And then on the Wednesday, you've got Ebbsfleet at home to Eastleigh. Forest Green at home to Halifax. And Yeovil at home to Chrissy's boys, Barnet. So that will be one to keep an eye on. I'm sure we are gonna do a lot of social content with Callum over the games this week. So keep an eye on our X account at National League Natter. And yeah, unless you've got anything else to say, Chris, well done and welcome back, like I said, on your podcast. It's been great to do it with you again. And yeah, do you want to take the outro?
Yeah, I'll do it. Good to be back, and I think we'll get a bit more of a routine. I think as well. We should be back for the next couple of weeks. Bang on. So yeah, as Aaron just said, make sure to check out the socials this week because there's a big midweek game week, and yeah, check us out Spotify, YouTube, Audible, wherever you get all your podcasts and all that stuff. So yeah, I think we'll be back next week for is it FA Cup this
So we won't be playing a National League game, but you will.
Funny, really funny joke, mate. Really funny. Yeah, you'll bet you'll find parties.
So I guess because
We'll be there.
There is National League action at the weekend, isn't there? So I'm guessing we will do a review probably, and probably a preview as well. We might give you a little bit of a concoction and mix the National League action involving FA Cup action involving National League teams in there as well. Who knows? It depends how cheeky we're feeling. But up until that point, we have been National League Natter. This has been your National League Match Day 19 review, and we'll see you in the week.
Perfect. In a bit.
Bye.